Well, it has just gone 8 o'clock and it's time to face the nation. My name is Oliver Dixon. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Really do appreciate it. A taxi boss was killed in Johannesburg earlier today. And this is allegedly ongoing violence between two warring taxi factions and organizations in Johannesburg. Well, when this took place in the Western Cape, what we saw the Western Cape government do was to suspend the functions of certain taxi associations along certain routes. And the question is, should the same be done in Gauteng? Well, that's coming up on the show this evening. I'm going to be having that conversation. The Western Cape's ANC PEC has been disbanded, replaced by a political killings task, replaced by a task team of the party. This has been a move that we've seen replicated in other provinces like Gauteng as well. The question is this an effective mechanism to turn around the woes of the ANC, the electoral woes in particular? And the Democratic Alliance has written to the Portfolio Committee chairperson on higher education about the now released names of the SETA board members and CEOs that had been confirmed by the Minister of Higher Education, Michael Karabo Khakhau of the Democratic Alliance, joins us to discuss that on the show this evening. We're going to be asking the question, why do they believe, as they claim, that this is a continuation of the ANC's attempt at cadre deployment? Karabo Khakhau joins us. Michael Beaumont of ActionSA joins us on the program today to talk about that motion of no confidence that the DA has brought against Panyaza Lesufi in Gauteng province. They say they've got some questions the DA needs to answer before they would consider supporting that motion of no confidence. All of that coming up on the show today. But first, let's take a look at my comment. I want to start you here tonight. Parliament's ad hoc committee looking into allegations of corruption and infiltration of the criminal justice system is faced with the arduous task of dealing with what some of the members of the committee describes as a conflict of interest. It involves DA member of the committee, Diane Kohler-Barnard. KZN Police Commissioner General Tladi accused Kohler-Barnard of breaking the law when she released a public statement which contains information which Mkwanazi describes as sensitive crime intelligence information. Have a listen at this.
Ms. Kohler-Barnard is a veteran in Parliament as a lawmaker who ought to understand what belongs where in Parliament. And I can confirm, Commissioners, that she is appointed by her own political party, which is a Democratic Alliance, to be a member of both the Portfolio Committee on Police that deals with the open account, as well as being a member of the Joint Standing Committee of Intelligence, which deals with the covert funds. So she's better positioned to call the department to come in account at the right platform. But we have seen, and I said when I started, I'm going to throw one example of each. I'm not going to go into details with many. There are many examples. But she's one of the leaders in our legislature that is participating in both breaking the law as well as fueling these malicious attacks that are happening within crime intelligence and ultimately directed at Khumalo as the head of that intelligence.
And so, in response to Mkwanazi's claims, Kohler-Barnard said that she did not obtain the information contained in a public statement from the work that she had done in the Joint Standing Committee, but rather from a News 24 article. And given that the information was already in the public domain, she did not break any laws. And she furthermore demanded an apology from Mkwanazi. Mkwanazi sustained his claims when he appeared both before the Matlanga Commission as well as the ad hoc committee. He further framed Kohler-Barnard's behavior as an irresponsible member of parliament because even if she did obtain the information from a News 24 article, it does not change the sensitivity of the information. And as a member of the Joint Standing Committee, she should have known better than to further oxygenate the information through a public statement. He argues, as you heard in that clip earlier, that she knows the right channels for her to raise her concerns, and which is the committee or parliament. Kohler-Barnard said that the committee, the Joint Standing Committee, did not exist at the time. This was after the end of the 6th administration, but before the start of the 7th administration of Parliament. I want you to note this. Mkwanazi frames the dangers of Kohler-Barnard's behavior as one that draws crime intelligence into having to respond to public statements about covert operations in a way that could compromise their work and or compromise certain members of crime intelligence. He says this fuels the attacks on crime intelligence and General Kumalo in particular. The ad hoc committee now believes that Kohler-Barnard, a member of the committee, needs to appear before the committee as a witness. This is how members of the ad hoc committee has responded to the dilemma of Kohler-Barnard's participation in the ad hoc committee.
I think we need to place it formally as the African National Congress that it is our considered view that the member concerned, Honorable Diana Kohler-Barnard, and the party she represents must properly reflect on this reality and act in a manner that protects the integrity of this process and Parliament in general. Because it's our considered view that to proceed as if we have not heard anything today. Now the general is before us and he has made a presentation. It will constitute a dereliction of duty on our part as members of this committee. And we are convinced as the ANC that it cannot be allowed to proceed without any comment about what needs to be done. So we would like the DA and the member concerned, starting with the member, to consider withdrawing her membership from the committee to protect all of us.
I just want to concur with the Chief Whip of the largest party. I've said this before as well in our meeting. Before General Mkhwanazi gave us the evidence as well with us here, because we had this anyway. But we didn't say anything about it. We asked that the honorable member must recuse herself.
The committee has now requested for legal guidance, a legal opinion really, on this through Parliament's legal office.
In the absence of any authority, in this case a legal opinion that disqualifies her or qualifies her, we are where we were when she was participating in our meetings. So once you say there is no opinion that comes that speaks about her, and there's no opinion that speaks against her, we are back to where we were. We have no right to remove any member until that kind of opinion comes and advises differently.
Okay, so here's my comment. The Democratic Alliance understands the principle of protecting the integrity of parliamentary bodies from the contamination of conflicted members. This is the exact principle that they relied on when they legally pursued Parliament and the MK Party for the inclusion of Dr. John Hlophe in the Judicial Services Commission. The facts are different, I get it, but the principle is the same. The integrity of the body matters more than the whims of the party in assigning individual members to serve on those bodies. Why then has the Democratic Alliance not removed Kohler-Barnard from the ad hoc committee? They have many other talented members of parliament in their caucus that they could assign to the ad hoc committee. Why the insistence on Kohler-Barnard's participation? Does the chief whip of the DA not understand what is at stake? I want to hear your take. Do you think the DA should recuse Kohler-Barnard from the ad hoc committee? You can send us a WhatsApp voice note right now on 078-459-1897. That's 078-459-1897. That number's right on your screen right now. And remember to tell us your name and surname and where you're sending your voice note from. And please do keep it short, under 30 seconds, or send us an X on Face the Nation SABC. And welcome back. The Democratic Alliance has written to the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training to urgently convene a meeting to discuss the appointments and the process followed by Minister Buti Manamela in the appointment of SETAs, AAs, as well as the CEO. The DA maintains that the minister used these appointments as an opportunity to reward political acquaintances, To discuss this more in detail, we're joined by the DA Member of Parliament who serves on the Higher Education Portfolio Committee and also spokesperson of the Democratic Alliance, Karabo Khakhau. Karabo, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. I have before me the letter that you had written to the Portfolio Committee chairperson. I want to read this part. A concern that our committee has ventilated with his predecessor and successfully saw the reversal of such appointments prior to the discharge from duties of former Minister Nkabande. It has also been brought to our attention, importantly here, that there is an irregularity with the appointment of some CEOs. What are those irregularities?
Good evening, Oliver. Good evening to the people of South Africa. Thank you very much for this conversation. So, the first irregularity that has been brought to our attention is that there's a deviation from the prescripts of the Skills Development Act, which dictate that once accounting authorities, in other words, board members, have been constituted or have been appointed, that they have an opportunity to go through a recruitment process, a shortlisting thereof, and then post the shortlisting process, then a recommendation to the minister of a minimum of 3 names from which the minister would have to choose from to then appoint as the CEO of all 21 authorities, which in this case would be 18 of the 21 sector education and training authorities that exist in the country, because you would also know that 3 of them have been placed under administration, them being the local government SETA, the construction SETA, and the services SETA, respectively. So it has been brought under our attention that the minister made a request that the extension of some of the CEOs' term of office not follow the prescripts of the Skills Development Act, that is 1, and that 2, that the period that was afforded to the now 29 days old as we speak today, today is the 30th year, 30 days old as we speak, accounting authorities, that they were given a direction to fast track this, which did not then afford them the necessary type of time to be able to do so, which is why in the past we've had arguments to say if the terms of office of a CEO lapses, then that accounting authorities, being boards, would have at least 6 months to then go through a rigorous process of recruitment to ensure that we have the best people possible. So that is the one gripe that we have, Oliver. You would have also noted in the letter that I've submitted that the other gripe that we have...
We'll get to the other gripe of rewarding political acquaintances. That's a separate conversation. I want to focus on the procedural stuff here because I think that's more germane here. Just so I understand you clearly, is the gripe of the DA and the gripe of yourself as a member of the committee that the minister had made a request that the CEOs of the 3 SETAs in particular that had been taken under administration to deviate from the ordinary process of appointment to extend the terms of those CEOs while those SETAs remain under administration, and that the board fast-tracked it. Am I understanding you correctly, Karabo?
You are not, Oliver. So the 3 that are under administration are not the conversation we're having. We've had a separate conversation about his choice of administrators in Ngwane and Masuka, who were implicated in forensic reports that detail acts of corruption and the mismanagement of public funds and fraud, actually. And then 1, Dade Mbalo, who was overseeing SETAs, all 21 of them, to their destruction effectively for 8 years since 2017. So that is separate. So there are 21 SETAs, 3 under administration, leaving 18 functioning according to non-administrative terms. So which means they would have to then follow the normal course of business. The normal course of business then for those 18 are the ones that I'm referring to.
Okay.
That he then, you would recall when his predecessor Nkabane left.
So just for clarity, Karabo, which of the 18 that you're flagging here are of concern of irregular appointments in this instance? Can you tell them to us?
So we're still going through tooth by tooth because there are multiple irregularities. So the understanding that
the
we
ones
have
you've
is that there was
confirmed
a
thus far,
blanket.
the ones you've confirmed, which ones were irregularly appointed?
Allow me, Grace, to land my point, Oliver. So the first point we have is that there was a blanket communication to all SETAs, which we confirmed in yesterday's portfolio committee meeting with the engagement with 2 of those SETAs, one being Mer SETA to be specific, that the minister had given them options to either reappoint people that are currently there or to make recommendations now, soon, which was confirmed by the acting Deputy Director General for Skills Development, who's now filling in for Mvalo. And then, so that was that blanket communication. But then the second one is there were choices given to different SETAs that were not afforded to all SETAs on the process to follow, and that different boards had to use their discretion on their understanding of legality, one, or to their fear of being ejected and punished by the minister for not playing according to his tune to do the right thing. So what you would have noted in my letter is I'm asking for this conversation to be brought to Parliament as a matter of urgency so that we're able to differentiate concisely between which SETA followed which route, which SETA didn't follow which route, in the same way that we did with Minister Ngabane, to have not an estimated conversation with the Republic, but to have a precise conversation with the Republic about what exactly happened. But beyond the irregularity...
No, I want us to stick to the irregularities because we need to clear that up first.
No.
In your letter, Karabo,
let me finish my sentence.
Hold on.
You would know that the point is still the same,
Karabo.
Oliver.
Just a second. I just need to get clarity here. In your letter, you said that CEOs have been already appointed through an irregular process. You've now described to us that some of these boards just had to apply their discretion, which doesn't follow the prescripts of the statutory framework. And that's fine. All I'm asking now is just for you to tell us which of those SETA boards have been flagged in your concern.
So the reason I was saying allow me to finish my sentence is because if you are not the Sangoma, which I am, you would have heard me say that beyond the irregularity of the procedure followed to appoint CEOs, there's also the extension of a term which itself also constitutes the irregularity beyond discretion of terms of CEOs of people, terms of CEOs that have, of CEOs, the extension of contracts of CEOs whose terms had already been exhausted within the system. For example, SETA, which was before the Portfolio Committee yesterday, the acting CEO had been there since last year as an acting CEO and is still acting CEO now, which technically would know that when Manamela's predecessor Ngabane left, this is one thing that she had left behind as something that she hadn't done. What she had done is just to appoint board chairpersons, whereas legally she was supposed to review the entire terms of CEOs. So when a CEO's term ends, so does the board, and so does the board chairpersons and all of those other things. So the boards that we're referring to right now, I'm saying to you that I'm choosing specifically to not tell you the names specifically of those boards because they don't all have the same trend. There are variations in their irregularities. And once the minister has appeared before the Portfolio Committee, we will be then able to know which irregularity matches which one. It would be premature to have a conversation with you on which of those are. But another thing that of an irregularity is the extension of contracts of CEOs, such as in SETA, for example, IN SETA, of CEOs who have overseen the audit outcomes that have come 4 financial years after 4 financial years that are unclean. We've cited by the Auditor General acts of irregularity in spending public funds, the AG not being able to corroborate information given, not being able to understand the proof of expenditure for certain amounts, which then means, Oliver, if you said you bought a ball pen for 20 Rand for argument's sake, you are supposed to be able to give it to me to say, this is the ball pen. And if the Auditor General asks for you where the ball pen is and you're unable to pinpoint for it, then it means in most likely instances, the ball pen does not exist, or you paid for the ball pen going to the shop and then you couldn't find it, or somebody stole it, those kind of things. That's the example. So beyond just the irregular extension of terms, we have people who have been reappointed. We have many issues in Agri-SETA.
I don't understand the apprehension to say it's premature to tell you which of these boards we've identified to have followed irregular processes, but you've just identified 2 of them, the NSETA and the SETA. But we're going to leave it there. It seems like you still need to verify a lot of these things, which I guess will, after the fact, substantiate your claim in the letter to the Portfolio Committee chairperson. Let's talk about the rewarding of political appointees and political acquaintances, as you put it in your letter, very specifically cadre deployment. Which of the people appointed to some of these boards can you verify to have been a political appointees? Karabo, are you? Oh, seems like we've lost Karabo Khakhau there.
So the first one.
Oh, Karabo, we have you there.
Here.
Sorry, the line is just not particularly stable.
No, I'm still here.
Okay, fantastic,
Hello.
fantastic. Go for it.
Yes, hi. Yes. I'm saying that there's a lot of them that cuts just off the top. There are 18 votes, 203 names. So I'm just going to list a few of them and not many.
Sure.
So the first one you would see is that when you look at the EDT SETA, the EW SETA, for example, you have Tankiso Fafudi, for example, who's a former councillor of the ANC. You would see with the Food BEP SETA, we have Ntatonkululeko Mteto, who's a former mayor of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal. You would also see when you go down to MIC SETA, you have Ndade Sabelo Mahlati, who has served in one of the ANC's PECs structures as a nominated member there, in the Western Cape, for example. You have Ndade David Mangena, who's listed as one of the ANC's candidates for ward councillor. You have, when you go to NQA SETA, you see Olihle Khware, who's an elected ANC Youth League representative and an executive there. You have Vusim Changase, for example, who's part of the RSC figures within the Madiba region of the ANC. You have, when I say there are 203 names, I really mean it. So when I say, and then you have go to Tita, there's Tabang Molefe, who's also an ANC Youth League branch figure there, who's been part of campaigns
just
there.
A question to that.
You know, I could go on.
Yeah, just a question to that. From the lists that you've identified to have are either members of the ANC or leaders in some form or some structure of the ANC across the country, which of those names that you've just listed now are not technically fit and qualified to serve on these boards?
So that's what we're still testing, right? Because when you test, Oliver, when you test political allegiance and competence, I'll give you an example with Gwede Mandashe's son, for example, in the past, Ubuyambo Mandashe. He has vast experience in the agricultural sector as a master's holder. And so the argument would be he has experience and he's academically fit and stuff. But why is he a problem? Does his father say just because his father's Gwede Mandashe, he mustn't get an opportunity? And the answer is no, that's not the argument. The argument would be his vast experience in agriculture should send him to agriculture and not any other SETA, which we saw in his case. It escapes my mind. With SETA, he was sent to become chairperson. So that's where we still are. And you would have seen extensively in my communication across all media platforms and social media to say that we are still cracking down the codes because, like I said, there are 18 boards, Oliver, 203 names. This just, apart from executives, this requires really extensive, because we don't want to be saying things that prematurely. But the bottom line is, of the traces that where we still are, we are still able to see that there are trends which we've cautioned against in the past of people being given an opportunity to loot the state for political gains just on the basis of that. But Oliver, it would also be remiss of me to not, you had a conversation before this conversation about Diane Kohler-Barnard, and as the DS National spokesperson, it would be wrong of me to escape this platform without having
Can I invite you back at a
point.
different time to respond to that? Unfortunately, I only have time to speak about the SETA matter. But very briefly, I'll give you 30 seconds to give me a take, but I will invite you later for a more extensive conversation on that.
So there's a difference between legality and public perception that we must not be able to escape. The reason why Parliament is unable to produce a legal outcome or input on whether or not Kohler-Barnard is supposed to be in that committee or not is because the legal outcome does not exist to test whether or not there is a legal conflict of interest. Whereas in John Chopper's case, as you allude, the matter was in court, him contesting, and the matter had already been ventilated legally to say that that he has acted in a way that is unlawful, that warranted that he must be chucked off the JSC. So when you test the issue of legality, you cannot put Kohler-Barnard and John Hlophe on the same competing scale of judgment because one legally has precedence, the other doesn't.
Well, political test and a legal test don't often intersect quite neatly as you would like it to. Sometimes we need to answer the political question and not just the legal question. But I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to invite you back. We'll have an extensive conversation about that at a different time. Karabo Khakhau, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Karabo Khakhau is a member of the Higher Education Portfolio Committee in Parliament from the Democratic Alliance and also the party spokesperson. We're going to take a break. We continue on the other side of this. And welcome back. ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has announced the disbandment of the party's Western Cape Provincial Executive Committee. The committee is to be replaced by a provincial task team led by former chairperson Ibrahim Rasool. The announcement was made following engagements with the PEC. Rasool is yet to confirm if he will be undertaking the task of convener due to other party responsibilities that he holds. Mbalula says they want to strengthen the party's branches ahead of the local government elections next year. To discuss the move in more detail, we're now joined by ANC Western Cape Provincial spokesperson Sifiso Mtsweni. Sifiso, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. What is the view of the ANC in the Western Cape of the decision by head office, Luthuli House, to disband the provincial executive committee of the party in the province?
Good evening, Oliver, and good evening to the viewers of SABC News. I think as a start, let's clarify the jargon. The provincial structure of the Western Cape was not disbanded. It was reconfigured. So in essence, you had a provincial executive committee that was in place since 2003. It led the ANC through 2 elections, and this year, the National Executive Committee visited all 9 provinces and assessed the state of the organization. And in its wisdom, came to a decision that there must be reinforcement in various parts of the provinces across the country. As you correctly put it, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and now Western Cape. So in essence, those who served in the Provincial Executive Committee before still remains, but what has happened is that there's been a reinforcement with those who have led the ANC before, in many generations before, and there's been quite a good mix of those who have participated in the life of the ANC in the province. But I think the whole intention is to ensure that the ANC in the province unites, renews, but everybody becomes on board in ensuring that the ANC regains its former glory in the province.
Yeah, just want to test the clarity on reconfiguration versus disbandment there, because I think it's important. Is the PEC that was elected in 2023 still the highest decision-making body of the party in the province?
No. The PEC has been reinforced.
No. I just need a... So when you say reinforced, it means the PEC still exists, right?
No. There's a provincial task team. I think what I was clarifying to you was the question, because you see, normally where a structure gets dissolved or disbanded, once it's disbanded, another structure gets put in place. And you may find that that particular structure that gets put in place is completely different people. But in this case, and the ANC has been very careful about the language that it uses. It has said in KwaZulu-Natal, it has said in Gauteng, it has said in the Western Cape that we are now reconfiguring these structures in line with the constitution of the ANC. But in the main, what the reconstruction talks to, it talks to re-strengthening, it talks to adding capacity into those particular structures, it talks to the unity and cohesion, but most importantly, in the main, it brings everybody on board in able to build the organization going forward. But as it stands now, the ANC in the Western Cape is led by a provincial task team, which is led by Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool, the former chairperson of the PEC, Comrade JJ Chalisisu, is the first deputy convener. So that shows you already that the person who's been the chair of the province is part of the structure. The former coordinator of the province, Comrade Thandi Manikivana, is now the coordinator. Comrade Richard Janchi is now the treasurer of the province. And you would see that it's quite a large number of people, inclusive of former leaders, such
just
as
once again,
Squatcher and others.
So just once again, would I be correct to say that the highest decision-making body of the ANC in the Western Cape province is the provincial task team and not the PEC?
Yes, it's the reconfigured provincial executive committee, which is now the provincial task team.
Okay. How many of the members who were members of the PEC are part of the provincial task team?
All members of the PEC that were part of, or all previous PEC members are part of the task team.
Yeah. Given if nothing has really changed except you have a few more hands helping the organization out in the province, for instance, Ibrahim Rasool coming back as former chairperson to assist, as you put it, in the reconfigured structure. If nothing's really changed fundamentally between who serves on these structures, what then prompted the need for this?
Well, I think what has happened last year in the provincial and local and the national elections, the ANC has had to undergo a very rigorous process of assessing the state of the organization across the board and really assess what led to the electoral losses that we have suffered. In fact, even in the Western Cape, you'd remember that in 2019, the ANC in the Western Cape was around 33%. And in 2024, we moved back to 19%, which is the lowest that the ANC has ever got in the province. So it was important for the National Executive Committee to make that assessment and say, what are the factors that have contributed to this challenge that we find ourselves in? And there are three things that have really come out. One is the question of a province that is besieged with divisions and factionalism. It's a province that is besieged with a lack of active structures across the board, but also an organization that struggles to appeal particularly to those who constitute the majority of the population in the province. Because, as you know, Western Cape is quite a unique province, wherein the national minority constitutes a provincial majority. So we then had to dig deep and say, how do we restore the ANC in the Western Cape? How do we ensure that it moves forward? So how do you resolve this? Firstly, you unite the organization. Secondly, you bring everybody on board. But thirdly, you ensure that you build active and existing structures on the ground where everybody plays a role in order to ensure that the ANC actually goes forward.
Yeah, again, I ask, if it's the same people, what has really changed?
Well, it's not the same people. If you remember, the ANC under Comrade Ibrahim Rasool actually ran the Western Cape. Ibrahim Rasool was the premier of the Western Cape under the ANC. People like Mkhabisi Squatcher were MECs in the province. He was later a provincial secretary.
But I mean, so let me reframe this. So no one has been removed. You've just added a few more people. That's fundamentally how I understand it. Again, it is pretty much the same people, just a few more hands. If that is the case, what significantly has changed?
No. What has changed here is that, yes, indeed, the provincial conference, because the ANC is a democratic organization, there was a leadership that was elected. And it's not for the National Executive Committee to go against the wishes of the branches of the ANC. But what it has happened is that post the conference, the leadership has struggled to ensure that there's been vibrancy on the ground and there's been unity in the province. So what the National Executive Committee has actually done here is to say, wait a minute, there's been a leadership in the province under Comrade Ibrahim Rasool that has actually won the province or received a large majority in the province. Why don't we bring in those extra hands, as you call it, to ensure that now, as we move forward, as we move towards 2026, we don't move with a set of people that are just elected in conference, but you move with all members of the ANC in the province, all former leaders of the ANC in the province, existing leaders in the province, and the young people that have actually come into the space. In that way, you are able to get everybody to work together, because at the end of the day, this is not about individuals. This is about the ANC ensuring that it works together, it unites, it renews, but at the end of the day, it regains
Yeah,
standing.
just lastly, and I want to double click on that last word you used, regains. If the appeal of Ibrahim Rasool said he was once the premier and had overseen an ANC that was the majority, well, it is also under Ibrahim Rasool where the ANC saw electoral decline in the province. What then is the appeal that he might be able to regain the electoral share and trust that the ANC had when he had experienced decline?
I wouldn't know where you get your information from because under Ibrahim Rasool, in fact, the ANC actually received the highest percentile vote. It was only after the removal of Ibrahim Rasool and the divisions that came afterwards where the ANC actually experienced electoral losses. So it's not correct that under Ibrahim Rasool, the ANC actually experienced any decline. I think what contributed to the decline of the ANC in the province has been divisions in the province, has been comrades being unable to work with each other. And I think the wisdom of the ANC, which I need to applaud in this case, was to say, we're no longer going to work with comrade A as opposed to comrade B.
Sure.
We're no longer going to work with grouping A as opposed to grouping B. We're bringing grouping A, grouping B, grouping C. Everybody, let's work together. Let's put aside our egos. Let's ensure that we unite the majority of the people in the province. We unite them with the African oppressed in the province. But most importantly, we now have realized that 20 years later, there has been a farce of the Democratic Alliance. It does not serve the interest of the people in the province. Yeah. In fact, people in the province in the Western Cape are far worse off today than they were at the time of Ibrahim Rasool.
Sure. Was this PEC a divided and factionalized PEC?
No. The question of divisions was not the issue that was considered in this case.
Okay.
What was considered was that in 2024, the ANC achieved 19%. That's not a desirable position for the ANC. What we want...
So the division exists in the province, just not in the PEC. Yes. So the divisions exist in the province, just not in the PEC. This is a united PEC.
No. The question of divisions, of course, cuts across the ANC as a whole. But the
so would one safely assume that it cuts across the...
Here is a provincial task team.
Yeah. Would one assume safely that it also then cuts across the
divisions
provincial
have always been there. Of course. In the provincial task team, you now have a united African National Congress that is going to restore the dignity and the standing of the ANC in the
Sifiso Mtsweni, we've lost you there. My apologies there, shaky network. We're going to leave it there. That's ANC Western Cape Provincial Spokesperson Sifiso Mtsweni. We're going to take a short break. On the other side of this, we continue. And welcome back. ActionSA in Gauteng has responded to the Democratic Alliance proposed motion of no confidence in Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi. In the statement, the party says many of the very shortcomings highlighted by the DA maladministration, poor leadership and failures of governance could have been avoided had the DA not supported Mr. Panyaza Lesufi's nomination as Premier in June 2024. I'm now joined by Michael Beaumont of ActionSA. Michael, so what does that mean? Are you supporting the motion of no confidence or not?
Well, I think it's too early to say. ActionSA is availing itself for a conversation. But certainly there are some serious questions that need to be asked about this motion. Now, we've availed ourselves for that conversation, but what is kind of confirming our fear that this is more of a gimmick than a genuine attempt to improve governance in the province is that there's been no response from the DA saying, yes, let's sit down, let's engage, let's discuss these issues. Because as you indicate, the very first thing that the DA needs to explain is, given that they were responsible for putting Panyaza Lesufi into office as the Premier, in fact, even seconded his nomination on the floor of the legislature, they need to explain their perspective and why they believe this is the right approach now and what's changed for them. But also it's quite important to look at this from the perspective of what is the alternative governance arrangement that the DA is proposing to put in place. Because what they seem to be doing is playing a game of Russian roulette.
Just before we get to that, I'm not sure it's entirely fair, Michael, to say the Democratic Alliance had supported Panyaza Lesufi, given very specifically that a coalition arrangement, unlike in every other province and nationally, does not exist between the DA and the ANC, in Gauteng in particular.
Well, if you remember at the time, the DA had black green and gold coloured glasses trying to translate the GNU into the Gauteng provincial government. And when they voted for the Premier, there were negotiations for that kind of government to be formed. The fact that those negotiations fell apart thereafter probably explains why you have a situation where the DA is moving towards a motion of no confidence in the government, that if they were a part of, there would be no such motion of no confidence. We know that because when you look at the government of national unity, which is failing in every single key metric from unemployment, economic growth, crime, and a head of that government who has been heavily implicated in a number of serious regards, there is no motion of no confidence in the government of national unity. And what is different? The DA's involvement in it.
Well, but this is a government that's how old? A year and 4 months, really. But it's also a government that has, over the last 3, which the DA can claim, and I'm not making the case for them, but they could easily claim, well, we've seen successive quarter-on-quarter economic growth in this administration, which we didn't see in the previous administration. If you just take SETA economic indicators of the last 3 months, and 2 of those quarters had seen positive employment numbers.
Well, I'm not sure what numbers you're looking at. The numbers I'm looking at show 0.6% for the last quarter and 0.4% for the quarter before that. And I think the more important point for us to look at as unemployment numbers
on the right side of the scale.
Well, I mean,
it's terribly low. I wouldn't vouch for those numbers.
Let's not celebrate 0.6% economic growth, Oliver. I think we've got to agree on that. But as the job crisis deepens in our country, ask ourselves, what economic reforms is this government bringing in place? Or is it merely a multi-party delivery of a failed ANC agenda? Because it looks like very little has changed in that regard.
Okay, let's get back to Gauteng, right? Economic contraction and 0.6% growth are not that far apart from each other, but it's a distinction nonetheless. In Gauteng, there isn't an arrangement between them, but they say the substance of why they're sponsoring a motion of no confidence in the Premier is based on the report of the public protector, but also the appointment, and this is one of those smaller issues, but the appointment of the HOD in the Department of Health, which the DA said a while back he's not fit to hold office, yet his appointment was confirmed or at least supported by the Premier, not confirmed by the Premier. He doesn't hold those powers. And the DA problematized that. Do you problematize that as well?
Yeah, certainly. I think there's some very real concerns, and we're not sitting here to say that the Premier has done a good job or that the Premier should be defended at all. That's why we are available for talks. From our point of view, we're very concerned about the Public Protector's report into the crime wardens. We called that an election gimmick from day one, and it's turned out to be absolutely true. We're very concerned about what we've seen in Tembisa Hospital with the looting that has taken place in that environment. And we're very concerned about the education outcomes in the province. These are all very serious issues from our point of view. Unfortunately, we're having to learn a lot about what the DA is saying through the media because they aren't engaging with other political parties in the substance of their motion. They're writing letters and they're being rejected by political parties across the board in the Gauteng provincial legislature.
So your take is we want to support you, but just come talk to us.
Well, we want to explore the discussion. We don't want to say that we will or we won't. We want to sit down. We want to understand what the merits of your proposal are. But I think, Oliver, if you don't mind, what is important to say is what is the governance alternative you're putting on the table? Because we need to see that any government is removed is going to be replaced by a better government, a more stable government, and a more effective government. And simply pulling a motion of no confidence without having the answer to that question is not only irresponsible, but it's a contradiction of the DA's position on previous motions of no confidence itself. And all of this makes us concerned that this is a gimmick.
Okay. Is the provincial government's faux pas with the crime prevention wardens, which the public protector had issued the report on, enough for you to say the Premier must go?
No, I think it's part of what we need to explore in a conversation with other political parties.
It's not enough on its own.
I think we need to explore this conversation with other political parties. I think there has to be accountability.
Sure, but I'm asking what's ActionSA's view? Do you think it's enough or not?
No, I don't think you can simply say that it's enough to pass a motion of no confidence because the question's got to be asked what government is coming in its place.
Okay.
As we've seen in Johannesburg, where you've had 7 mayors in the last few years, literally going from bad to worse to even worse. It actually has to be a discussion about an alternative governance arrangement that can be put in place. And I think one of the ironies we need to deal with is the DA has been the one to say they're here to rescue South Africa and Gauteng and Joburg from the EFF and MK. But they're passing a motion of no confidence in the ANC with no answers to what the alternative government will be. That's a contradiction.
What does a formidable alternative look like to you?
Well, I think it's got to be an alternative that's built on what is going to change in government. It can't just be about who gets what position. There has to be a proper coalition agreement that explores those kind of changes and how stability is going to be achieved. And it has to ensure that those political parties can work together and produce coherence in the vital functions of provincial government, which really focus around education and healthcare.
Yeah, let's talk names, because that ultimately is what coalition politics comes down to. If the DA says, Panyaza must go, we're willing to support, say, we'll front our own candidate, and for them that might be Solim Simanga. Is that a candidate you're willing to support?
It's not a discussion that's even happened in ActionSA, because you're asking us to entertain a discussion around a new premier we would support, when yet we haven't even been engaged by the party sponsoring the motion on the premier that they wish to remove. I think from our point of view, we would have very serious concerns about Solim Simanga, given his failed record in the city of Tshwane, which Dr. Lesufi MOC is having to clean up right now as we speak. But again, who is going to govern with the DA? The DA has said the EFF and MK are public enemies number one. Both of those parties have told the DA to get lost as a consequence of that. So when they say they're going to put forward a candidate, who's voting for their candidate?
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Michael, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming in. Really do appreciate it. Michael Beaumont of ActionSA, laying out what their concerns are with the proposal by the Democratic Alliance. Let me take you to this now. The chairman of the Alexandra Randburg Midrand Sandton Taxi Association, Molefi Victor Moiketsi, and one of his bodyguards were gunned down in Marlborough, north of Johannesburg, in a brazen daylight attack earlier today. Another bodyguard and a motorist who were wounded in the incident were rushed to hospital. The incident has once again raised concerns about tensions in the taxi industry, barely a month after a peace agreement was signed amongst rival associations. For the latest and more detailed look at the situation on the ground, we're joined by the ARMTA Taxi Association Public Relations Officer, Tladi Lepolesa. Tladi, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. And my condolences to the loss of your chairman in that brazen attack. Where does this leave the peace agreement?
Thank you very much, my brother, and greetings to yourself in studio and your viewers at home. The peace support or the peace celebration that we had in Alexandra is still standing from where I'm sitting. I don't want to cast aspersions or speculate. We are leaving that to the police to do a thorough investigation and come up with a scenario which took place as to where is this coming from, because from where I'm sitting, I'm not aware of any outstanding or any issues with any association.
So what do you suspect might be the motivation behind the assassination of the chairman?
It would be very much reckless of me if I'm to enter that arena of speculating, you know. This is a very serious matter. In that part, I think we should leave it to the SAPS to do due diligence and investigate this case thoroughly.
Yeah. Look, this certainly, at least from an outsider's perspective, seems like an a priori continuation of what is taxi violence in the province. Let's take a look at another province where such has happened, the Western Cape. The decision there by the MEC of Transport, in their instance the MEC of Mobility, was to suspend the operation of certain routes and certain taxi associations along those routes while they negotiate and come to a place where they can truly say taxi violence has come to an end. If hypothetically speaking, the MEC of Transport in Gauteng were to consider a similar move, what would be the view of ARMTA?
I think that is a bit premature for now, because what happened in the Western Cape, it was very much vivid and clear that it was taxi-related violence between two warring factions or associations. But in this instance, it's different, because we're not sure what is the motive behind. So in saying that you want to put a halt or a stop to the taxi operations in the area without having facts about what actually transpired, I think it's uncalled for.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Tladi, thank you so much for your time this evening. Really do appreciate it. Tladi Lepolesa is the Public Relations Officer of the ARMTA Taxi Association. Well, that brings me an end to my time here on Face the Nation. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to be in your company for this past hour. Well, the SABC News continues at the top with the late edition. From myself, Oliver Dixon, it's goodbye for now. Cheers.